Here. I was like, I didn't know who that guy was.
Ms. Kalamaz.
Here.
Mr. Bush.
Here.
Vice President Darrow.
Here.
President McClellan.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members have had the opportunity to review our last board meeting minutes, and that's ask for a motion to approve those board minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Darrow, Mr. Bush, roll call, please.
Vice President Darrow.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Ms. Kalamaz.
Yes.
President McClellan.
Yes. Any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight?
No.
With none, I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Ms. Kalinowski,
Second.
Mr. Bush, roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Vice President Darrow.
Yes.
President McClellan.
Yes. Now to communications to the board and superintendent's items. Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClellan. Board of Education members, I have a couple updates for you this evening. The first is in reference to planning for 2018-2019. So as our families throughout our school district are starting to discover, once we hit the magic month of January, we are still full-blown into second semester of the current school year while we start planning for the next school year. So planning for 2018-2019 is well underway throughout the school district. Last week, the high school held its curriculum night for parents for 9th grade through 12th grade to understand what was available to students through the student registration process. Student registration for students enrolled in grades 9 through 12 actually opened today, with the focus being students in 9, 10, and 11 going to 10, 11, and 12. And Mrs. LeBeau will be working with Mr. Carter and Mrs. Warren at the high school for transitioning students from 8th grade to 9th grade for student scheduling as well. Those meetings are actually scheduled, as well as the middle school curriculum nights later this week and next for students at the middle school. It's an important time for our families within our school district because the student registration process at the secondary level leads to staffing that we actually do really throughout the spring, heavily in March, but really throughout the spring. At the elementary level, we take current course enrollment numbers based upon student counts and specific grade levels, and we project for staffing purposes what our needs are for 2018 and 19 so that we can determine how to educationally meet the needs of families. It's very, very important, and Mrs. LeBeau and Mr. Carter have been emphasizing this to families through their communications, to take the student course selection process very seriously for really two very paramount reasons. The first is the number of students that sign up for courses allow us to determine if the course can even be offered and the number of sections required for staffing purposes. So we want it to meet the educational needs of kids, and really they need to make judicious decisions in the courses that they choose to register for. And by doing so, we have minimal course changes that are necessary once we build the master schedule to efficiently and effectively maximize the use of our existing staff so that we live within our means associated to the 5-year forecast and the budget projections. So we absolutely want to provide the best educational programming and courses available to students, but this process is fairly significant and important for families to take the time and actually go through the process to consider. So if you're currently a 5th grader going to 6th grade, you're going to have specials opportunities to learn about in the performing arts. If you're currently a middle school student going to the high school, you have all kinds of options coming your direction. So please, for family purposes, take the time to sit down with your child and have really great conversations about what their interests are, because there's a plethora of electives available at New Albany High School, dominantly for students in grades 9 through 12. You have 4 years to access those courses, but make your course selections wisely, because we staff courses based upon student interest in the electives. So if not enough kids sign up for an elective, it will not be offered for the sake of offering it. The course will be canceled and a student will go to their alternate that they actually select. So this process is really, really important for families to understand and participate within. Next topic in relationship to 2018-19 is, as we approach spring, personnel recommendations are going to be coming fast and furious to the Board of Education. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, it's my responsibility to make recommendations to the Board of Education for the renewal, rehiring, or new hire for persons that are vacant within our school district for staffing. We take those positions very seriously as we go through this process, but as spring becomes in the air, and it's only January, trust me, I know every day at 3 a.m. when I'm out and about when the weather's not cooperating. But when spring is in the air by March, we will be having conversations about, for example, administrative contract renewals. There are numerous administrative contracts at the building level or across the school district that are up this spring. Those renewals will come forward to you as a Board of Education from my office, probably right now I'm going to tell you March-ish. We're currently finishing first semester. Mid-year performance reviews are underway. The data reviews are underway. We'll make personnel decisions and recommendations as we look into the spring so we stay ahead of the hiring season. Same thing happens on the classroom side. So once we finish the whole staffing process to determine we need X number of teachers in every grade level based upon the number of students in a specific grade or specific core content, we will post vacancies for hire, and we'll start the hiring process for any teaching vacancies, either through retirement or a true vacancy as we approach spring. So you just need to know that 18-19 is full-blown now underway, even though we're still in 17-18. So we will do everything we do every single day while we also now start the page to turn the page to look towards 2018 and 19 and all the work that takes place, because all of that happens before kids disappear from our campus at the end of May. So we are literally a school year ahead while we're actually in the same school year. So I just want to remind everyone of that, because you're going to start hearing registration has started, planning has started. They're talking about teaching vacancies. There's an opening in X person's retiring. We will have retirement receptions late May or mid-May for persons leaving our school district, but we are working through those vacancies as they become available. Dr. Troyer, as you are aware, announced a retirement in December. We did post that position. We're actively interviewing. First round interviews will be complete this week. I'll send additional information as we move through that process. But as we have a vacancy within the school district, we will judiciously go through the process for justification to determine it's necessary. And then based upon that justification, move forward in the hiring process. So I just want to remind you that you're going to start hearing within the school community parents talk about 2018, 2019. Because that is now underway. Next topic is middle school, high school cafeteria loop. So we announced this afternoon that we've been working with the city and our school resource officer, Ryan Southers, to continue to evaluate the future of the Rose Run project. And the city was here in the fall to do the Rose Run corridor project on the refurbishment that's anticipated for Dublin-Granville Road. And we had closed the middle school, high school loop for first semester to assess impact to student counts, drop-off, pick-up, everything that had to happen, got statistics on the information to understand what the traffic patterns became. And the first semester is now passed. So we met with the city this past week, specifically Ryan Southers as the school resource officer, to talk about our next phase for opening what I'm basically labeling in the communication that Mr. Galloway sent out on my behalf this afternoon and the principal's behalf is an express drop-off. So we're going to begin February 1st, reopen the middle school, high school cafeteria loop for AM morning express drop-off. The cafeteria building is open every single day for students before school. So students are not required to stand outside and wait for the buildings to open because teachers are in professional learning communities, staff meetings, or not in their classrooms. So students that are dropped off early are welcome to go to the high school, middle school cafeteria. There is adult supervision that's provided. Breakfast is also available. Kids also go to the coffee shop, so that's also a busy place in the morning. But they don't have to stay outside. We're opening the express drop-off from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8:15 every single day. This is our next attempt to try to get some more data to understand, is it possible when Dublin-Granville Road is retrofitted for refurbishment for the future, we have to maintain some form of egress to have access to the middle school, high school cafeteria building and the middle school building and the high school building, JKL, for fire purposes. So one of the things we want to study is it possible to maintain egress through a single lane that the fire department's going to need for egress purposes, but at the same time use it, in this case, for morning drop-off. So this is the next phase of what we're trying to attempt to gather additional data on to help make an informed decision on everything that's being considered for the retrofitting of Dublin-Granville Road in the future by the city. and how it impacts our middle school, high school cafeteria loop. First semester has given us lots of data. I will be honest and tell you that there have been challenges for traffic patterns at different times on different days. We did peak Fridays as an example when fifth grade choir or fifth grade band or fifth grade orchestra, depending on the Friday, also came into school at the same time as grades 6 through 12 morning drop-off. If you were in the middle school loop, as an example, it got a little bit more congested because the fifth graders were using it to go to the intermediate school. So we have that data. Now as the next phase for iteration, we're going to open the middle school, high school cafeteria loop beginning February 1st, again for express drop-off. In accordance with New Albany Code for motor vehicles, the curbs will be painted yellow so that there is no parking that's permitted. It's truly to discover, is it possible for egress purposes to maintain an express drop? The motor vehicle entering the loop has every right to stop at the curb, let his or her student from a family depart the vehicle on the right-hand side so that they exit to the sidewalks, and then the motor vehicle is to continue. We will, at the top of the loop, continue to allow students with disabilities or students with special needs, have the ability to traverse. We use that every morning for 3 buses. We will maintain those buses for right of access to the middle school, high school, and ultimately introduce car traffic through the express lane. So I know, and I'm just going to use Mr. McClellan as an example because I see him often in the morning for drop-off. We're hopeful that this helps, but I will be honest and tell you, just for really public purposes, and thanks to Mrs. LeBeau, because she's the biggest saint ever standing in that middle school loop every morning. We have some adult behavior that also has to be corrected, and we included that in the communication today in hopes that our families will partner with us not to cut each other off, not to cut through the parking lot, not to get out of your motor vehicle and leave it unattended, not to have probably some what could be construed as inappropriate conversations through your glass windows or with your windows down at other drivers. We have to exercise appropriate adult behavior and model that for the students. So we're trying to be as gentle and as nice as possible, but we've sat down with the city. We're private property. I have limited authority that we actually can exercise short of it being an accident, but we sent home a communication today saying we're trying. Mrs. LeBeau is probably the saint that I can point to every single morning with Dr. Peterson in that bus loop, trying to help, but we need parent help too. Patience is required, and we just are asking, we're going to try the loop now, that's next, but let's see what happens. But again, we need support and appropriate behavior. And I know Mr. McClellan, because we've talked about it, President McClellan and I, in a couple conversations where he's been an eyewitness to a few types of behavior. You're not a participant, you're a witness.
Make that clear.
But we do, when we get information, we contact the family, we have a conversation with the individual. SRO Southers has contacted families on our behalf. We've asked for patience and cooperation. And that's all we really can do, is that together we can make this work. There are multiple loops across the school campus. I would also encourage you, when it's not inclement weather, to consider dropping at a different loop and allowing your student to traverse down the sidewalk, because some parents have discovered those other loops and send emails to us telling us how wonderful it is that no one's using them but them. And that's great that they're using them, but everyone can't be in the same place at the same time. So we are opening the middle school, high school loop. In case you hear about it, I announced it this afternoon with Mr. Galloway, and we are asking for parent help and using this loops safely for student drop-off and pickup in our school district. But again, the opening of the loop is just for drop-off to begin, only in the morning. It will close because Mr. Carter, Mrs. LeBeau, the assistant principals, and Mr. Southers and Mr. Chaddock, we've all observed an increase in student safety during the student day when car traffic is not in that loop. We don't allow deliveries in there. We don't do parent traffic in there. There's no visitors in there. Kids are actually using the green space in between the 2 buildings for play during a recess. So it's actually been taken over by kids. It's a wonderful place during the day. We don't have an intent right now to reopen it during the student day because it's actually created a safer environment for kids by having it closed.
Doesn't the yellow paint on the curb provide some authority to the police?
Yes, and that's why we're actually painting the curbs yellow. SRO Southers notified the school district that it is permissive under Ohio Revised Code and local government for the city that he has authority if you're parked in a no parking zone on private property because of the curvature for paint. So they will be painted yellow during this test to see if it works so that he can enforce the fact that you can't exit your motor vehicle and leave it parked. It's meant to be truly a drop off and go. We're calling it an express drop off. That was our creativity, but it's meant to be a drop and go. Please don't park there because SRO Southers is going to help us. We need the data to discover if it's possible for egress for the fire department to be maintained through a singular loop that also provides parent drop-off capability. My last item for this evening is in recognition of the Board of Education. So on behalf of the Ohio School Boards Association, January is Board of Education Month. So you may not know that, but it's National Board Appreciation Month in the month of January. So on behalf of the Ohio School Boards, it's my honor and sincere privilege to present to you tonight your certificates for your exemplary service to our public school district, the New Albany Plain Local Schools. Being a board member is really a volunteer job. Honestly, for the number of hours that you have to dedicate and the work that you do outside of these business meetings or our work sessions, there's a lot of materials that get sent to you. There's high expectations that we have ongoing conversations and routine discussions. You're very, very active as 5 board members for our school district, and we're truly fortunate to have the 5 of you be elected by our school community to represent our local taxpayers and our community at large and our parents on behalf of the 5,000, nearly 5,000 kids that are here every single day. So it's a 1,000 or 5-to-1 ratio. So you have 5 of you, 1,000 kids each. So we're going to start sending you pictures so you can learn their names, just like I do. So you can study them so you know who your 1,000 kids are beyond your own. I'm just joking. But the 5 of you really have that responsibility to work with us to really govern the school district on behalf of our school community and the 5,000 kids. So if you would, please accommodate me and come out to the front of the table so we can give you your certificates and Mr. Galloway can take your picture for National Board Month.
I would have wanted a tie.
It's supposed to be a surprise.
Super.
Come on, Ms. Jenkins.
Are we all up?
We're all
Waiting for a name to be called.
We'll do 2 rows. More in alphabetical poll. Oh, sorry. Thank you. This has to be you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It's like the Academy Award. Okay, you have to bunch together. Turn sideways. Will you pulling? Yeah, hold those in front of you, please. Right side up. Here we go.
Yes, perfect. And don't bump me your side, so I'm bumping. Okay.
Thank you.
Better put that on the map.
That's it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sawyers. Next is an update from PLE. Hello. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, sure. 1, 2, 3.
Good evening. I'm Karen Ramey, 7th grade language arts, and excited to represent PLE this evening and let you know a few things that our staff are doing that they're excited to share with you. In the middle school, Kim Hurst had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade choir students carol with her in December. Although the date was changed on December 20th, over 100 students helped to move about the community in Carroll, and they had amazing community service project that gave our students an opportunity to share their time and talent for a worthy cause. They were excited after they got back to the school to warm up with a party, hot chocolate, treats, and Mrs. Hurst wanted to give an extra big thanks to Donna LeBeau and Sarah Peterson for helping her to chaperone that group that night. Next, 10 students from the high school are drawing 1 KC and AP drawing, had their work accepted into a scholastic art competition. A total of 17 works of art were accepted with 9 honorable mentions, 7 Silver Key Awards, and 1 Gold Key Award. Silver and Gold Key Awards winners will have their work displayed at the ACOC Gallery located in the Kanzania Center at the CCAD from February 13th to February 23rd, and award ceremony will take place on February 11th at 10 a.m. Our final one to highlight this evening is Dana Kagrice. She was invited to give a presentation to pre-service art education students on the topic of building positive classroom culture and classroom relationships. She did this in October at the Miami University in Oxford. During her presentation, she talked about care packages that her students and we as staff at the middle school received from her and the positive relationships that were built based on that. Her presentation was well received by students and staff from universities in Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois. As a part of the care package for the conference, they got her swag bags at the conference. So, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion items tonight. First, any board liaison reports for this evening? Okay. Then the second item is our 5-year forecast, second reading.
So I presented the 5-year forecast to the board at the last meeting. I have no additional changes, updates. I received no additional comments or input. So unless you have questions, I really don't have anything else to add.
Everybody's been reviewing it. No questions at this point? Okay. Third item, PK-12 curriculum update.
Thank you, President McClellan. I'd like to invite Shirley Hamilton, Director of Secondary Education, and then Scott Emery, the Director of Elementary Education, to the podium. We're halfway through the 2017-18 school year. There's specific curriculum initiatives that were underway within our school district. I've asked Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Emery to update the Board of Education and our public this evening on progress, specifically within those initiatives. And to mention a few data elements to kind of give you coming attraction for a data discussion that we're going to have in February. So Dr. Hamilton, let's start with the secondary side.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyers. Board of Education members, President McClellan. We're going to start with, we have actually developed at the beginning of the year a curriculum planning, a 5-year cycle for curriculum planning. This really hasn't existed in the past. And so we felt that it was really important that we have a cycle, a systematic approach to revising and auditing our curriculum. And so this year, as you can see, we're doing middle school and high school math and world language. At the elementary level, we're working on writing and technology. Then next year, we'll be working on K-12 English Language Arts, K-12 Music, and high school drama. Then the next year, we'll be working on K-12 Science, K-12 Wellness, Physical Education. Then the next year, K-12 Social Studies and Art. And then finally, K-12 Technology, Computer Science, and Business, high school computer science and high school business. So that every 5 years, we'll be sure that we're doing a curriculum audit and review, and we'll be updating our standards and updating our curriculum to make sure we're keeping up with the current trends. So this is something that we're going to try really hard to stick to and follow, and to make sure that we have a systematic process. So I'm going to skip that one for a second. So this year we're doing a math 6 through 12 curriculum audit and resource study. And so as a part of this, what we've been doing is we've reviewed the state standards. We've looked at the Ohio Department of Education model math curriculum. We've looked at and analyzed the Ohio State test blueprints and the scope and sequence. We've also tried to determine areas of strength and areas of refinement based on strand data and item analysis. So we've been doing all those things in a very collaborative process. I'll go back to that screen, a very collaborative process with our teacher teams. So we've had a teacher team audit, and we've been doing all of those things. So we've unpacked the standards and aligned, and then we've aligned the standards. We've developed the scope and sequence and pacing guide. We've done item analyses, and we've analyzed the test blueprint. We've also analyzed our instructional practices and best practice research. We've also established common formative assessments. We've examined resources, and we're in the process right now of implementing some lessons with some of the resources that we've identified that would fit our curriculum. We also have developed an evaluation rubric, and we've looked at things like alignment and rigor and relevance and focus and coherence and technology integration and assessment. And we're also going to look at visitations to some districts who are implementing some of the resources that we've talked about. So it's been a very systematic, collaborative approach that we've followed so far this year with our math 6 through 12 curriculum review. We also participated in the Hanover study, and Hanover, which is a research group, helped us survey the top 15 high-performing districts in the state and districts using Bridges curriculum in elementary schools, because we wanted to make sure that we were being consistent and that what we were doing with Bridges when we got to the middle school and high school wouldn't be something that would be philosophically inconsistent with the Bridges curriculum. So we wanted to see what the Bridges districts were using in their middle schools and high school. And so we did this really exhaustive study, and we were looking specifically at curriculum and resource alignment. I'm going to skip that for a second. And we also did some in-depth math teacher interviews at the beginning of the year, best practice research. We did the similar district implementation of math resources, alignment with Bridges in math, and then the vendor review, which I just talked about. Now, I know this is hard to see, but hopefully you're able to see it there. But we actually looked at all of these districts, and unbelievably, 13 of the 15 districts responded, which is really an awesome response rate. And I know Mr. Sawyers and Dr. Troyer both contacted people in the districts and asked the superintendents and assistant superintendents to respond, and the curriculum directors. So they did, and it's very helpful. So you can see right off the bat, Solon City, which is #1 in the state, uses what's called CPM, College Prep Math at the middle school, and College Prep Math Traditional at the high school. And so on. Rocky River City uses Connected Math at the middle school, and then they use different publishers at the high school, which is a variety of things. Marymount, which uses Bridges, uses Eureka Math at the middle school, and then a variety at the high school, and so on. I'm not going to go all the way through these. Now, we did throw in Olmsted Falls City at the bottom. They're not really one of the top 15, but they use Bridges. And so we wanted to also see what they use, since it's a Bridges district. And so they do use CPM, College Prep Math, and CPM Traditional at the high school. And so if you look at this next slide, just kind of summarizes what the Hanover research showed us. And that was that we had 6 districts that use CPM. We have 4 districts using Bridges, and then we have 6 districts using CPM, or core connections, they call it at the middle school. 1 uses Eureka, that also uses Bridges, and then Glencoe, which is what we currently use. We are currently using Glencoe Math. There are 4 districts there that use Glencoe. And so as a result of all of this research, Hanover basically recommended that these would be the top resources that they would recommend. So Eureka was one, CPM and Core Connections, which is the same thing, it's just Core Connections at the middle school, CPM at the either middle school or high school. Glencoe was not as highly recommended, which is what we're using now, as CPM and Eureka. So CPM, as we saw, 6 of the districts, of the top districts use CPM. So it was more highly regarded and highly recommended than either Eureka or Glencoe. However, what we've done is we've asked for samples of material so that we can pilot some lessons and implement some lessons. And so we've had those pilot materials come in, and we have given those to the middle and high school teachers to utilize. So they are trying to implement some lessons now with CPM, Eureka, and we already know Glencoe. We've also gone through and done an extensive analysis we had a review of 18 different materials and resources for the middle school. And Mrs. LeBeau went through, and she was very helpful in determining, at least for the middle school, what the comparisons were between CPM, Eureka, and Glencoe. And it was very, very revealing. We've shared this with our math departments at the middle school and high school. They're totally on board with where we are. They're up to date and with where we are with the math curriculum review. And we're hoping to be able to bring a recommendation to you by the March 12th, I believe it is, board meeting. So we're working feverishly to try, and we're also going to try to do some visitations, as I said, to some of these districts. So that's what we've been, and we have a rubric that we've developed, as I said, that looks at different things. Now I want to go back just for a minute. Okay, I'm going to go back to this. This is a curriculum framework that we developed that we're utilizing, and we're going to try to use this with all of our curriculum reviews and audits. And that process that I've described is what we're going to use for all of our audits and reviews. And this is the framework we're going to try to use. So we look at the unit or topic, domain / cluster, depending upon what they call it. And then time frame or pacing, we're looking at that. And then standards and evidence of learning or learning targets, or what we call I can statements. And then instructional strategies and reviews, common formative assessments, which we've been developing as we've been going along, summative assessments, academic or content vocabulary, and differentiation strategies. So we're also using this framework, and these have already been completed by the math teachers at the middle school and high school for Math 6, 7, 8, and then Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and so on. So we've been developing these curriculum frameworks first semester. Okay, now let me go back. And now, as far as action steps go, with middle school and high school. We've been using vertical alignment team meetings twice a month, the whole first semester, which have been very, very valuable. So we have the middle school and high school math teachers, the middle school and high school science teachers, the middle school and high school world language teachers meeting twice a month in vertical alignment team meetings to talk about common issues and to talk about alignment and that kind of thing. And these have been very valuable for us to do, and so we're continuing those second semester as well, and they're very, very revealing, as I said. And then high school intervention learning centers and Eagle period to support our struggling math students. We've implemented those this first semester, and again continuing that for second semester. We're progress monitoring by using MAP in the middle school and high school. We've started the high school Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 MAP testing, which we have never done before. That's new this year. So the vertical alignment teams are new. The MAP testing is new at the high school, and we're trying to analyze growth data. And Jess Mamias is working with us, with the teachers to do that as well. We're also targeting intervention for middle school students. We have math and writing labs, interventions, enrichment, and support that we're utilizing. We have common planning time for middle school math teachers. Professional development this year, we've been working on differentiation, especially at the high school, data analysis, R factor, understanding the cultural impact. We've been doing book talks and all that those kinds of things as well. Development and use of common formative assessments, and of course the World Language Department is doing their curriculum review as well. They have already, last year they started auditing their curriculum, and they started revising their courses of study, so they already had some of the work done. So now they're putting it in the curriculum framework and looking at resources and that kind of thing. So they have a little bit different process this year because they kind of got to start last year. We also have middle school electives that you heard about at one of our other board meetings, and basically the electives will be semester long instead of quarter long, as we talked about. Mrs. LeBeau and I talked about that. And they'll be multi-grade level. Now, band, orchestra, choir, and global language will be year-long, but they could also be multi-grade, but they will be year-long courses, those courses. Some of the elective choices, because remember with our elective options committee, one of the things that they really wanted us to do was make sure we had choice. And so our elective choices will be art 1, 2, 3, and 4, wellness 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, we talked about this at a prior meeting. Physical education for high school credit, life skills, technology 1 and 2, and global language exploratory. So those are all of our electives, which we talked about. Now, in terms of some new programs, because you might say, okay, that's fine, you're doing math, you're doing world language, what else? And so we're doing electives, we're doing a lot. But as far as new programs, I don't know how many of you heard about or have heard about our robotics program this year, but we have a new computer science teacher at the high school who's doing amazing things with robots. And in these particular slides earlier in the school year, the students programmed their robots to dance. And they had a dance competition at the intermediate building for the 4th and 5th graders, I believe. And so they presented these robots, and they danced to different songs. And they did like what is it called, the nay and this kind of thing. And the kids went wild. I mean, the students loved it, and it was really cool because. And then they voted on which, whether the blue one or the red one, which robot kind of performed the best. And the students at the high school programmed all of these. And these were sitting, I kid you not, these were sitting in cases for the past, I can't tell you how many years, just sitting in cases in a storage area and not being utilized. And so one of the things that I told our computer science teacher when we hired her was, I want these robots to be used and to be yes, and dancing, right?
It's a really neat
and
thing.
to be dancing, and they did some really cool dances and songs. They really did. It was very
awesome.
neat. And these are the humanoid. They call them humanoid robots. So they really can do all those things. And the high school students came and did the presentations and led it, and it was just a really neat experience. So that's something that's you might not be aware of that is very exciting that's happening. We also I think you might remember, as part of our program of studies development, we adopted some new courses for next year at the high school, and one of those courses is an astronomy class. And so I thought it would, we use the eclipse to show the picture of that. So we have astronomy that's going to be offered as an elective. One of the things we tried to do with our program of studies this year at the high school was to offer additional electives for students in different areas. So we had the 2 social studies electives. We had the 2 science electives, zoology and astronomy, and then we have an English intervention type of class that we also recommend. And that's a process that's used every year by the high school staff to be able to offer additional courses. If we're not in the 5-year cycle, for example, they still can request and ask us to look at offering different classes that they see a need for, and they do surveys with students to see whether there's a need for these classes. So those are just some of the new programs in action, if you will. We also have been part of the E3 K-12 initiative. And this is our, as you know, our STEM lab, our solar house, as we used to call it, STEM lab. And we have a really cool program going on with that. We have the IGS grant, which I'm sure you've heard about, in partnership with the PAST Foundation. And so we have a cohort of 20 teachers, right? Actually 19, because somebody dropped out. So we have 19 teachers who are right now involved in 3 courses through the PAST Foundation, 3 professional development kinds of courses. They're online, and they're learning about problem-based learning and real-world experiences for students. And they've been watching videos, and they've been communicating back and forth online. I'm able to, Marilyn and I are able to go in and see what they post. And our teachers, right now we just have middle and high school teachers participating. Next year we'll have the elementary group, the cohort group. But this year it's the middle school, high school. And so, we're really excited about the hardware and software, the professional development. The purpose is to, of course, test innovative technologies and learn more about energy concepts and sustainability. And we're going to be able to install and monitor energy-related technology, solar panels, Nest thermostats, energy monitoring systems, and look at new and alternative energy. But it's going to be where students can actually work and learn in this living laboratory that we're creating. So we're really excited about this initiative as well. So that just gives you some idea of some of the innovative and new things that we're doing as well. So any questions anybody has? Or
Could you go back to the math for a second? And I'm sure that there are several questions, and I know there's probably a lot of.
Which part? I'm sorry. Which?
The right there is good.
That one. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
So, I'm sure you have a lot of work to do to determine what your recommendation is. But could you give, at least right now, what are the advantages, disadvantages, what differentiates each of these programs? Do you have enough on that to kind of tell us why would somebody use Bridges versus Envision?
Yeah. Well, I'll let Mr. Emery talk about, he's already talked about Bridges, but I'll let him talk about Bridges as far as that goes in his presentation. But a couple of things, like with CPM, for example, it's deep conceptual learning. And Mrs. LeBeau, you'll have to help me a little bit maybe with this, since you did some of that. But it really goes deeper into the conceptual learning aspect of it. Eureka Math, for example, one of the things we found is that, this is just from analyzing different reviews. So it's not what our teachers have just started to implement some of the lessons. But for example, with Eureka, we found out that it's not really good for differentiation. So we're not sure that we want to really go down that road, and it's not maybe as high level, would you say, as the college prep math CPM?
Yeah,
so go ahead.
Of Eureka is that every lesson is great if you have all the same kids sitting in the same classroom who learn the same way, which is not what we have. CPM starts with a problem, and kids learn in teams, so they pose a real world problem, hard to say fast, and then not given a solution, and then kids are asked to explore the solution. Glencoe gets a hit on procedural skills. So there are 8 mathematical practices that Glencoe doesn't, according to what we've looked at, doesn't do a great job of hitting and identifying well. And does more procedural. This is how you, for example, 7th grade today was solving linear equations. And so it's really taught how to solve them instead of exploring how to solve them, trial and error kind of thing. The curriculum is, so the teachers tried to use CPM today, and because it's a state standard that they were looking at today, and there was very little information on that state standard for using CPM. So they would have had to gone, if they just used CPM, they would have had to gone back to Glencoe and grab some extra material, because the standard is solving one-step equations, and there was 3 problems on solving one-step equations, as opposed to a multitude of pages of that for Glencoe.
Let me just say something.
Sure.
The other thing is, as we go through this, thank you, stay here. The other thing is that there is no perfect curriculum resource. There is no such thing as a perfect curriculum resource. So what we have to do is see what fits the needs of our students the best. I mean, that's what we're concerned about. What will meet the needs of our students and fit within our curriculum that we've developed. So that's the other thing we're looking at.
When you decide to switch over to a different curriculum design, how do you make sure that when you transition students that there's no gaps in their learning?
Good. Yeah, that's a great question. And we spent, much to Mrs. LeBeau's chagrin, we actually took teachers out of the classroom and spent a day actually going through the standards, actually going through the blueprint, going through the item analyses. We did all of that for the whole day to make sure that there weren't any gaps, that there weren't any standards that we weren't covering, and to make sure that we had everything aligned and that we were doing everything.
So in CPM, 82% of the major work is covered in that curriculum. Glencoe gets a hit on that. They're less, 7th grade CPM and Glencoe are both less than 65% in 7th grade. It's very interesting. 7th grade is the worst as far as finding a canned curriculum to use.
But it's where we need the most help, right?
Makes perfect sense. In 8th grade, CPM is 80%, 81%, Glencoe is 77%. The standard is about 67%. They like to have of the major work of the district. Mathematical practices are huge as well, to make sure that kids understand conceptually as well as this is how we do the work.
And that
If
conceptual
nothing's perfect,
understanding.
can you take some pieces from one
And they do.
add it to the other?
For sure, they do. And they have teacher-made materials that they use as well. We just need to find the fit that is the very best for our students and our teachers.
So have we been primarily using Glencoe then for the past several years?
Last year and this year with Fidelity. Yes, 2 years.
And then, so when will the new curriculum be executed? This semester, or will?
They're piloting. So we have piloting going on in Math 7, Math 8, in the middle school, Algebra 1, and we just got delivered some geometry. So Gian Gephardt is using some of the geometry stuff, and they're putting it in where they are.
And 6th grade has some materials as well, because Bridges is K through 5. So we also have to include 6th grade in this math study, and we've tried to include them as well in this situation. And at the high school, we're also doing Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. We're piloting the materials there. And the high school teachers are very excited to try something different. And there are some concerns with Glencoe. And so.
Shirley, if I may, I'm going to go back
Yes,
to Donna.
please.
Donna, I'm going to go back to Mr. Newmoff's question because I think you can actually answer it. I just want to rephrase it.
Okay.
I understand this curriculum audit's for looking for the curriculum that will be implemented next year. So that's the process that we're currently in a curriculum review. To Mr. Newmoff's question, based upon last year's results for students, what changed this year, regardless of this curriculum review and regardless of new resources for next year? How is it different in math this year at the middle school for students? To Mr. Newmoff's question, please.
Sure. So we have teachers really aligned to and had good results with OST using Glencoe last year. Teachers really embraced it. So they used it. So now we are implementing with even higher fidelity. And we are doing, Alex was newer for everybody last year. The year before last year, before Shirley and I got here, Alex was only piloted in some pockets. Everybody's using it now. And so we've had lots of conversations with our math team about how we use Alex to shore up gaps, if there are gaps, and then to extend. And so Alex is in, and that's a
Does
Glencoe
that go up all
product.
the way to 7th and 8th grade, Alex?
Yes.
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 They now have access. They did not in the past.
Okay.
And actually, our Algebra 2
Algebra.
kids, we have middle schoolers in Algebra 2 and in geometry and in Algebra 1, and they also have access to Alex
At the middle school.
at the middle school level. And so it really does, we are using it in a way for RTI, response to intervention, when kids have gaps showing up, and we are using it to accelerate children. So not every child in a classroom of 28 is using has the same Alex program or design. It's very individualized based on that child's needs.
Let me also add that as part of our vertical alignment team meetings with math this year, we have been doing the item analysis. We've spent many, many meetings actually going through the item analyses from the OST exams and looking to see where did our students, maybe go wrong, what happened, and what could we do to shore things up and to, and a lot of times they say, oh, I see why the students responded this way. I need to do this. I need to change this. I need to make this better. And they actually developed a list of items that they could, that they gleaned from the vertical alignment team meetings, from those item analyses that they would be able to implement and make it better, make things better for students. So.
You said that the Alex is a Glencoe product? Is that what you
No.
said?
It's Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But to Mr. Darrow's question, if we,
You didn't ask that.
well, no, you were asking about taking
Blending.
defaults. Okay.
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Can you access Alex?
Would we be able to access Alex if we did not use, okay.
Yes, it can be bought standalone.
It's a
Okay.
higher cost. If you don't purchase the materials, Alex is a higher cost.
Gotcha.
It really
but
comes
it can
back
be
to a
simple.
cost-benefit conversation. Are we seeing data that produces results for kids deliberately because of Alex, or is it something else that's producing the results? Because just to be totally transparent about it, Alex is very expensive. It's one of the highest software accesses given to a child in this school district. It is not a cheap program. It's going to get more expensive if we don't choose Glencoe as the math adoption resource. But that's part of this whole judicious process that we're going through. We want the best resource. The art of teaching is not going to change to where Mr. Darrow was going, where you pick and choose different resources. That's the teacher's responsibility. That's the art of teaching. What's not optional is the curriculum, the standards, and the guaranteed viable access the kid's going to get to have the ability to demonstrate on the test blueprint or on the assessment that he or she has learned the material because they've received access to it through the teacher. The art of doing it's the teacher's responsibility. That's the how. The what is the non-negotiable called curriculum.
And then it's outcome oriented.
Correct. And it's based upon the outcome, our kids learning. And that's part of this mid-year that we're now doing because, and Mr. Emery's going to talk a little bit more specifically about at the elementary when he comes up about MAP. But the MAP data now for winter is coming in. So we're doing that assessment to determine how did kids grow during first semester? What types of gains are we seeing? How does that gain then align to the continuous improvement plan of where we expect to go as a school district? Because that's part of the data analysis. That's Jess's everyday job as the coordinator of assessment and accountability, where she's looking holistically across the school district and all the formative and summative assessments, either done it as a common assessment in the classroom or through the MAP standardized testing that's done across the school district. What are we doing to demonstrate we're growing kids every single day in the school district? Because that's the responsibility we have to meet the end outcome that we want to increase student achievement. So you're actually getting a data report. We're going to tease you tonight with Scott, but you're getting it in February once all the MAP data is back. It's just not all back. So just based upon the testing windows of how it falls and when we get access to it, Jess will present in October for the February for the mid-year update on data across the school district because we'll have all the MAP data back.
And we, we looked at bridges because we wanted to make sure that other districts, that what they were doing, we were going to be consistent with that as
Right.
well. So that's one of the reasons why
Right.
why we started.
The other point I would point out about this chart, and I think it's very important, and Shirley mentioned it when she started the presentation, the 15 school districts that are up there, the highest achieving with the exception of Olmsted Falls. They have the absolute highest student achievement levels in the state of Ohio.
In math.
There's in mathematics. There's a reason they have those achievement levels. So we want to understand what they're doing beyond just the resource, because the resource is a resource. That's not going to get the kid to learn the material. The resource isn't going to do it. It's supplemental. So we have to understand how they're bringing those resources to life, to where Mrs. LeBeau is going, in the conversations with the classroom teachers, to sit down and say, if Becky's teaching linear equations X way and Michael's teaching linear equations Y way, if Becky's outperforming Michael on a common assessment, we need to have that conversation for professional practice to figure out, what did you do at the resource that maybe I didn't because your kids are outperforming mine? It's just an honest professional conversation, not to point fingers, but to say, listen, you're doing something phenomenal as this math guru over here, teaching linear equations. So what did you do? Here's the resource. It's just a tool. It's one piece of the puzzle, but it's an important piece when you look at the achievement levels of how the resource is being used.
And the analysis goes class by class.
Right.
So you can, one particular teacher might teach 3 7th grade math classes.
That are very different.
And she will say, this group is performing at this level, this group is performing. And so we look at that as well. How did that happen? Why is that happening? How did that happen? What's the variable? We have those conversations.
So I just want to make sure I understand where we started with all this, which is you're moving toward a more structured 5-year deep dive review, right?
Correct.
In every discipline.
In every discipline.
Yes,
And they're rotating, so it's not the same ones every year.
correct.
So every 5 years, every discipline will get a deep dive review.
That is correct.
In between those 5-year deep dives, what sorts of changes or what sorts of reviews take place that would result in curriculum changes or resource changes, like some of what we're talking about now? Because you've got, in math, you've got resources that we've only been using now for 2 years, yet we're already looking to possibly make a change.
And I think we would look at our OST results, we'd look at our test scores, we'd look at various types of data, map data, we'd look at different data to see whether or not the students were learning and growing, because that's, obviously that's what it's all about. So we want to make sure that that's happening, and that the standards are being taught. We're not, based on the blueprints and the OST item analyses and the strand data, that we're not leaving anything out. And so we would want to make sure that continues. We'll continue to have discussions. It's not, even though it's the deep dive, as you said, we're not just going to forget about it. We're going to continue to have discussions. We're going to continue to look at data and make sure that we are doing what we're supposed to do.
That all makes sense. My biggest concern is on both ends of that process. One is that if things aren't working, we need to have a mechanism for dealing with it. 2, changing curriculum every year in any substantive way strikes me as really problematic for teachers, students, and parents, right? I mean, that seems like a fairly big problem. You need to stick with something for at least long enough to figure out how to do it. So.
Yes, exactly.
There will be a presenting defined need. I'm going to use computer science as an easy example, because right now in Shirley's chart that she had up there, it's in the 5th year. The state's currently having conversations to change the standards for computer science across the school district. If that happens and they come out in spring for fall implementation as a new standard, we have to go back and look at computer science, because there's an immediate need that's presented, because the state's changed the standards by which the kids have to play the game. So if we have to change an assessment based upon the new standards, then you're not waiting 5 years to do that, because it's unfair to our kids. So that would then change the cycle, and it would get fast-tracked.
And that's really what's happened with math. Math they have a new model curriculum. World Language has a new model curriculum with new I can statements. English Language Arts is just finished doing their model curriculum at the state level. So that's sort of what's happening now, that we are, why we're doing all of this. So. Any other questions?
I just want to make one comment. I thought it was awesome that the older kids came to demonstrate to the younger kids the robotics because, I think it's so inspiring for a younger child to see an older child do something versus, maybe a teacher sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really, really cool.
That's
So
awesome.
now the intermediate school kids want humanoid robotics and they're not cheap. So, but now that they've seen them, they want to know when they get them because they could do phenomenal things with them too. So they're ready for them to arrive there just as much as the high school.
And of course, you knew the robots were doing the nene, didn't you?
Oh,
You recognized that
I
instantly.
absolutely did.
Okay.
Yes. I've seen it before. I don't do
Thank
it
you,
very
Dr.
well.
Hamilton. We're going to transition to elementary from Mr. Emery, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. I have 6 items I want to give you an update on this evening, each one just about 1 minute long. Before I start, though, I do want to give an update from the last meeting when I shared the 90% promotion rate for the 3rd grade reading guarantee. Since that time, we've had 7 more students earn their promotion scores. We have 8 more children testing tomorrow. So Principal Smith and I are very hopeful, due to all of our hard work at the primary school, we might be at a mid-90, 95% promotion rate by the end of the week. So we're making great progress with literacy.
Awesome.
Yeah, kudos to the primary school. They've done a remarkable job this year. First update from the slide behind me is about Bridges in Math. So as you're aware, we've implemented a new math program in grades kindergarten to 5 called Bridges in Mathematics. Our teachers have done a remarkable job in working to bring a guaranteed and viable math curriculum and the use of common assessments to all elementary students. Our teacher leaders, Jamie Slane, Sheree Curvin, and Susie Norman, have been critical to the early success of the program through modeling lessons, co-teaching, and planning with the classroom teachers to ensure we're implementing this new program to fidelity. We'll be hosting a visit from Upper Arlington schools next week, since that district requested to learn more about what we are doing and why we are doing it with math instruction in New Albany. When reviewing our winter math data, and that covers the first semester, from the MAP assessments our students recently completed, we've been pleased with the results compared to last winter. When looking at the average mean score in each grade level, we have an increase of 4 percentile points in 3rd grade, 7 percentile points in 4th grade, and 9 percentile points in 5th grade. These results are the highest we've seen for the winter MAP since we began using this assessment with all students in 2015. A deeper dive into the student data, as Superintendent Sawyer suggested, will be coming next month with Jespa Myas, and she'll give you an update on our progress on achieving our continuous improvement plan benchmarks. In order to bring, or in addition to using common assessments for math, we've also implemented a common assessment for reading called the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills, or as we call it, DIBBLS. Not only has the switch to DIBBLS given us, I know it sounds funny, but it really is a great tool. Not only has the switch to DIBBLS given us a tool to quickly identify reading difficulties and track reading growth in a consistent manner from kindergarten to grade 6, but it's also 1/4 the cost of the assessment that was used in grades 2 to 5 in previous years. With DIBBLS, we now have 3 consistent literacy and tools in place, joining the benchmark assessment system, which you may have heard referred to as BAS, and the measures of academic progress, or MAP, to demonstrate growth of our elementary students over time. Each of these tools provides a view of reading achievement through a different lens, helping us to ensure students are appropriately challenged and that none fall through the cracks during the transition from grade to grade or school to school. With the support of Coordinator of Assessment and Accountability, Jespa Myas, all this information is entered into our district's Performance Matters data warehouse system to allow for just-in-time responses, mid-course corrections, professional discussions, intervention, and enrichment. A concern expressed last year by parents serving on the Curriculum Advisory Committee was that our elementary learners' profiles that we send home at the conclusion of each grading period were confusing and unclear to them about a student's academic achievement. This year, we've made significant revisions to the learners' profiles, which we are now calling report cards, a term very familiar to all of our parents. The most significant change is at the intermediate school, where we are now issuing letter grades in 4th and 5th grade using the same grading scale that we use in grades 6 to 12. At the Early Learning Center and primary school, we revised the former markings to make them clearer to parents. For each indicator on the report card, we're now marking each child as meeting grade level expectations or not meeting grade level expectations on very consistent criteria. In addition, we revised the math section on all K-3 report cards to match the Bridges math program. And due to the efforts of our Early Learning Center principal, Michelle Unger, we've created a report card for our new preschool program that's based on Ohio's early learning standards and the state's early learning assessment expectations. And speaking of Principal Unger, I do want to recognize her efforts along with our early childhood and non-public school special education coordinator, Jackie Zieber, for the opening of our preschool program this year. From walking the hallways at the Early Learning Center, you would have no idea that this is a program in its very first year of existence. Principal Unger is hard at work completing the state's Step Up to Quality application to be recognized as a 5-star preschool program. Even though we're not allowed to submit this application until the spring, she's hard on work at this every day. Unfortunately, the review of this application can take up to a year. But regardless of that long process, we're confident in Michelle's ability to bring us a 5-star designation at our preschool. Of course, returning after a 5-year absence to the elementary grades is technology. Starting in first grade, we're now implementing the state technology standards in a lab setting and beginning to introduce keyboarding skills. The state is working on a K-12 computer science standards, as Superintendent Sawyer suggested, to accompany the current tech standards. So I'm pleased that we already have a course in place ready to implement the computer science standards so we can have a consistent approach to coding and beginning engineering skills when those standards are released. A significant change this year has been the transition of 6th grade from the middle school to the intermediate school. A limitation of the elementary schedule is that it only allows for 1 electives period daily for 6th graders. But we view that as an opportunity because that schedule allows us for more core academic time in any given day without increased costs to the district. The period length for 6th grade students in math and English language arts has increased from 50 minutes per day to 80 minutes daily. To make sure this additional time is used effectively, Principal Katie Nowak has developed professional development for the English language arts teachers in both reading and writing instruction. Based on our first semester winter math data, our 6th graders have earned the highest mean reading score for this time of the year when compared to the past 3 years. So early indicators are the reconfiguration changes and the increased instructional time are beginning to benefit our students academically. For math, we've created new courses for 6th graders called Pre-Algebra A and Pre-Algebra B, which allow us to continue to accelerate students without having to skip content. Our standard class, Math 6, is using consistent materials across all of its sections this year. And our Algebra 1 course is aligned with the offering at the middle school. So based on winter math data, our current 6th graders have earned the highest average score compared to the 2 previous winter math averages. Specifically, we saw a 6th percentile increase in math for 6th graders this year. As Dr. Hamilton shared earlier, we have a long-term plan for curriculum revisions, and English language arts follows math on that program selection implementation process. Next step for elementary is we want to improve our students' writing skills. We're sampling instructional materials and providing professional development in writing, and I look forward to updating you at a future board meeting about planned curriculum changes in writing for next school year. Again, thank you for allowing me a few moments to share with you updates on our elementary curriculum initiatives, and I welcome any questions you have about these initiatives and their alignment to our statement of purpose and continuous improvement plan. Yes, Debbie?
Just wondering how parents reacted to moving to letter grades and the new report cards.
Scott, can you put up the intermediate report card just so board members can see your example?
Sure. Just thinking about it.
It'll show up.
Patrick, I don't know if you can enlarge that or not. I think overall the reaction's been positive because I think in American culture, people understand letter grades. And with our old learners profiles, with all the different indicators and using those markings of distinguished, strong, partial, moderate, and so on and so forth, I don't think there's great clarity to parents necessarily how their child achieved over the previous trimester. I think with the letter grades, it's very clear. One thing I really like, though, that Principal Nowak and Vice Principal Toma did, though, this year is that they put a qualifying number next to each letter grade so the parent can have some idea of how much intervention was provided to help that child earn the letter grade.
Okay.
Certainly being with fourth grade being their first introduction to fourth grades, there's a high degree of adult support in order to earn the grades. So if a student is receiving a large degree of adult support through intervention and so forth, maybe they have a B, but then there's a 2 next to it, the parent would understand that B came with a high degree of adult intervention to achieve that level. So the key on this is that we believe success breeds success, and we want students to have high scores early with letter grades in order to feel good about school. But on the other hand, we don't want to mislead parents that those are being earned completely with their own individual efforts.
So just along those lines, do kids ever get an F in fourth grade?
I think you would view an F, and this would be the same, I think, with 12th grade, as somewhat of a failure on our part as the adults in the equation. That if we, based on the fact that we now present grades in real time to parents, which they haven't had before in 4th and 5th grade, that they can log in and see their child's grades at any given time, they're going to be aware of it, but obviously the teachers are aware too. So we have what we call the MTSS process at the intermediate school, as we do with all the schools. So I know for any student that's getting a grade such as that, they would be on the radar, and hopefully that F wouldn't end up on the report card at the end of trimester. Yeah, we certainly don't want a 9-year-old to think of himself or herself as a failing student
Right.
In 4th grade without us providing some strong intervention to that child.
And so have parents reacted positively to this? The new?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
so. I mean, if Mrs. Tomer and Mrs. Nowak have different ideas that they want to share, but
Anytime you get a big change like this, I think a lot of them get a lot more emails and questions of communication. But I think in regard it's been good, because if there is a missing assignment or an opportunity for a retake, that's really that scaffolding and support. So if a student didn't do well on the test, we want to figure out why. We want to provide some reteaching or intervention and give another opportunity. So I do think it has, in some regard, opened up some two-way ongoing communication about partnering together to support the student.
I think it made it difficult too on our middle school colleagues that really the first experience they were having with letter grades was middle school. So now we feel confident as the students progress through 4th, 5th, and 6th grade and reach Principal LeBeau that there's already a strong concept of what's needed to earn high grades.
It did provide clarity and consistency, Mrs. Kalinowski, for the parents, because parents do understand letter grades.
Right.
So when it was the coding system or a specific word, they were meeting expectations, not meeting expectations, they wanted more detail. They would ask different types of questions because there was confusion. They just didn't understand, well, if they're not meeting expectations, you have to give me the list of stuff that they need to do, or I need to help them with to meet those expectations. The letter grades have just really, and I think the performance level being next to it helps the parent understand, are you working completely independently, or do you have significant support and assistance to earn that B? Because over time, that's going to mean something different as the student progresses chronologically.
So what, I mean, I don't know if there's a finite year that we kind of stop giving that assistance, but I know, you know, in the lower grades, the kids do get to retake tests and get their grades higher. And, you know, my kids are older now, so they don't have that opportunity. And I'm just not sure, you know, where that transition is. So kids, you know, are more independent.
So retakes can exist all the way through high school, depending on circumstance. So it's a privilege that's earned for an educational reason. So we do have students at the high school, and Mr. Carter shaking his head, and Mrs. LeBeau at the middle school, that actually do have access to retake summative assessments. So we do that if it's educationally warranted and proven for the child. Choosing not to study for a test doesn't result in a consequence of saying you get permission or basically the favor of retaking a test. If you perform poorly, and we can understand why you perform poorly, and you can relearn the material or have access to a different way to learn the material and then demonstrate your growth, there's an outcome within an individual teacher's classroom on what they do with that reassessment. So it does happen all the way through the student's senior year, but not in the same aspect of what's happening right now in a fourth grade classroom when you're earning it for the first time and trying to understand what do we need to do to provide different levels of supports or intervention because it just didn't click for you. And again, goes back to Mrs. LeBeau's point when we were talking about mathematics, not every kid learns it in the same way. So you have to find that access, and it could be an auditory issue. The kid can't transcribe it from ultimately, it's in my head, it's in my brain, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I can't express it using the pencil. But I can sit down and ask you to solve a linear equation, and you can verbally tell me exactly what to do. It's a transcription issue. So why would we penalize you in your learning process? That's a different challenge for us to solve. You have the content, you just can't translate it to the piece of paper. So we have to discover those things, about 5,000 kids across this school campus in every single classroom every single day, and help those kids achieve, because that's our expectation on the outcome side, that we want higher level of achievement and growth. That's the expectation. And it's hard every single day. But it's important. It's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to continue this conversation for data in January, or in February. I keep saying January, in February, with Jess Mamaya. So she's going to actually go through that with you in depth to talk to you about performance matters, the data warehouse, and mid-year progress check on the continuous improvement plan based upon the data monitoring that we're doing. Next, we're going to transition to a completely different topic. The 2017 Gallup survey results. This is part of our continuous improvement plan. We implemented this in the school district last year, and I've asked Jess Mamias, as the coordinator of assessment and accountability, to come and share those results with you. Jess?
Good evening. Just want to remind, when we look at our continuous improvement plan, we look at benchmark 5, and we're really looking at their school culture and our social emotional well-being. Just a reminder, it's the we commit to administering age-appropriate student climate surveys to measure the percentage of students who feel safe at school, supported, and have at least one staff member to approach with problems. So we've administered the Gallup survey the last 2 years. This past fall, we administer it in October in students in grades 5 through 12. It is to no cost to the district if we administer it in the month of October. We had just over 2,700 students participate in October. And if you look at it nationally, there are over 900,000 students across the nation that participate in the Gallup survey. There are 4 main areas in the Gallup survey: engagement, hope, entrepreneurial aspirations, and career and financial literacy. There are 2 main things that we look at when you look at the Gallup survey. We want to identify and maximize our engagement and our hope builders, practices that contribute to a positive school culture, build student engagement, and create hope for tomorrow. We also want to identify and minimize engagement and hope busters, practices that unnecessarily drain students emotionally and mentally and could keep them from learning and growing. So we really want to focus and look at the engagement and hope on these the first 2 parts of the Gallup survey. Engagement, so this, again, it's that how much are kids excited about coming to school? Do they feel safe? And so these are the questions that are asked under the engagement piece. Specifically, if you look at our benchmark 5, it says, do students feel safe at school, supported, and have at least one staff member that they can go to? On the Gallup survey, there is a question: do I feel safe at school? And when you look at the 2016, I apologize, it's small, is 4.35 compared to 2017 is 4.23. Those changes are within statistically significance. They're not significant. So those ranges are roughly the same from year to year. We are still substantially above the national average when we look at students as they respond to if they feel safe at school. The other benchmark the other indicator within the benchmark is, do I have at least one teacher who makes me excited about my future, or one teacher that I can go to? Again, we were in the 4 out of 5 range, similar to the national average. There is one area when you look at this information, and it's the 8th grade mean. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it drops. We expect this to drop, but it dropped significantly in the 8th grade area. And so this became an area of why. And so it's that question, it's that red flag. Actually, I've had conversations with Dr. Peterson and Mrs. LeBeau in regards to how do we address this? Because when we look at the 2016 data, that same group of students didn't have that low of a score. These 8th graders are currently have a score. Let me go back. Those 8th graders currently have a score similar to a 12th grader. That's not okay. So Dr. Peterson and Mrs. LeBeau have worked with their student advisory committee and have gone directly to the source and said, how can we help? And so I will talk about that in our next steps. But that is one area that we looked at and definitely saw a red flag. And we're like, how do we address this? The hope, the idea of, do students feel hopeful for the future? Do they see themselves being successful? Do they have the one area in the hope that matches to our benchmark is I have a mentor who encourages my development. Again, we're within that statistically significant, not insignificance between those 3.79 and 3.7, and still above the national average. Again, you'll see a slight dip in that 8th grade score compared to the 7th and 9th. But again, it's going back and asking that question. Are they disengaging from school? What's going on? What are some of those things that we can work on as a district? The third, entrepreneurial, I can't say that word, aspirations. We are similar to the national average. When we look at this, this is, I want to invent change. I plan to start my own business. Really looking at that administrative kind of program of studies and how our students are doing in the business-wise. The financial piece, financial literacy is actually a standard, a requirement for graduation of financial literacy. Part of feeling safe in having a mentor is being involved. And this gets wrapped up into this particular criteria. So when you look at our scores, 4.56 and 4.59 compared to a national average of 4, our students are definitely feel that they, this one is in particular, are they involved? So when you look at items and programs that the district offers, our students have many opportunities. And what's interesting about this one is that the grand mean by grade goes up. So as students become older, the opportunities for them increase within the district. And Dr. Hamilton shared some of those earlier, whether it be the E3 Solar House or the STEM Lab, whether it be the robotics, the addition of some of the 5th grade band. And so we're providing those opportunities and looking at students being engaged in the district. So next steps. Gallup provides tremendous amounts of resources in order to look at data protocols to understand the data that's provided. Not only is it given to us by the district, but it's also provided by each building. And so currently, the intermediate, middle, and high have all used some of the data protocols that have been offered through Gallup in order to help staff understand Gallup results. So what are we doing in our buildings? How are we addressing some of these culture results from the Gallup? The intermediate is looking at the power of words, a book study on word choice. We know how much our students take in all of the words that come at us. So in that intermediate 4, 5, and 6, how are we using that language? What we may feel as an adult may be appropriate, but the student may take it differently. So looking at the power of the words that we use with our students. This is an adult professional development to help adults look at the word choices. Continuing to use the PBIS and their Eagles Rise program and really highlighting students. Every Friday, they're plucking names out of students that have been, what's the word I'm looking for, have been awarded for doing good things within the building. The R Factor work continues through all 3 buildings. At the middle school, the student advisory, as I spoke earlier, Dr. Peterson and Mrs. LeBeau have worked specifically with the 7th and 8th grade student advisory. They brought the students in, they gave them the data, and the students had to go through data protocols to understand the own Gallup survey. So then it comes back, well, what actions can we do in the building as adults to help students become more engaged? The high school, we have the Culture and Climate Committee with staff and community members. Mr. Carter also used his Student Advisory Committee at the beginning of January. Again, multiple data protocols provided the students with high school data. They created action plans. It's been shared with staff. He's going to bring his student advisory a student advisory group back together to kind of go through what the staff thought of those action plans and what can actually be implemented this school year. Continued district R factor training, planning and development with all staff and students. And finally, which I'm actually we got the results back last week. We also provided a social emotional learning survey that was provided through Hanover that was given to students in grades 3 through 12. And what it takes a look at in particular is support, culture, self-determination, and wellness. So when we look at that piece of engagement, are students engaged with the school? It's great we understand that there's a high engagement, but what is it? What are those actual actions within the building that allow them to say, yes, I feel engaged? And this social emotional survey allows for us to dig a little bit deeper into that particular engagement piece. Those results just came back, and so we're still looking at those, and those will be shared at a later time. So planning for the future, we're going to continue to use the Gallup survey to really gauge where we are in terms of our students' engagement and hope. We want to maintain engagement as long as we can. I understand there's a natural decline, but we want to maintain a high engagement in order to help our students be as successful as possible. Any questions or comments?
We declined slightly on engagement and hope. Do we have the national average? It looks like they were.
Say that again?
Do we know what the national average was? Did it go up or down for engagement and hope?
In the last couple of years.
You know, last year, we finally have year-over-year comparison. It looked like New Albany dropped slightly.
It dropped slightly, but it's when that's statistically insignificant, like within that standard error. When you look at the national average, that was at those when I looked from 16 to 17 remained roughly the same.
Okay.
Along the same lines as Paul's, I certainly appreciate that the changes are minimal, but I think it's important that we confront the truth honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit redundant, but I think it's important we confront it honestly, which is we didn't go up. We didn't get better, right? In any measure except for the financial literacy. So I think it's important that we recognize that. Now, one of the things that might be happening, and the R factor may play a counterintuitive role in this, is as you establish expectations for how we're going to behave, if we don't live up to those expectations, people will be less satisfied with the same results. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that may be part of the process. That doesn't mean that we don't keep doing it. It actually means we do keep doing it, but we've now set expectations that this is how we're going to interact with kids and how we're going to interact with each other. If we don't live up to it on any sort of survey, a climate survey, people are going to respond worse. So I just think we have to confront the reality that we haven't improved and take concrete steps to get there. So a suggestion that I would have is identify where we think we want to be or can be, what's possible in each of these measures if we determine that these are important, and set a goal. Say if we're on engagement, if we are at 3.97 and the max is 5, right?
Correct.
If we think it's possible to get to 4.3 or 4.5 in some period of time, we ought to set goals.
I would say that that's a great, to set the goals. The SEL that we administered in December, I think is going to help us more, because the Gallup survey, as great as it is pretty overarching,
Mhm.
right? What are those actions? Some of the questions within the SEL survey in particular is I feel comfortable, I have 5 people in the district that I can go to.
Mhm.
Well, that hits on our benchmark 5. And if they don't have those 5, what are we doing? Because those
Exactly.
are those actions. I think, like I said, the Gallup is so overarching that as we start to dig into the SEL and really look at those actions that are going on, I think it will provide us more information and to know how to get to increasing those engagement
Agree
scores.
completely.
Good point.
So the SEL, this is the first time we've administered that, so we don't
Yes.
have them year over
Let's
year.
talk a little bit about that just to help you understand some context. So we were approached by Hanover researchers, another school district somewhere in the United States that actually created a social emotional learning survey that they wanted to administer to students. So Hanover approached us because another client was doing this survey and they were looking for other school districts in the Hanover network that would also consider participation to administer the survey for free. So we didn't pay for it. We didn't pay for the disaggregation of the data or the results. Everything just came back from the actual survey. But we were asked to participate. We reviewed it. We went through, we looked at the questions. We had conversations at the building level about the types of questions that were being asked. We contributed some feedback to the school district. To this day, we do not know who the school district is because of the confidentiality clauses that had to be signed off on. But we were then sent our student results. And then we agreed as part of this learning process with Hanover, it's a similar school district to us. We do know that. We asked for the comparison between their data and our data for the student pool, given the similarity. We have not received that either. So we did it as an opportunity, to Mr. Newmoff's point. It was provided to us. We didn't know about it. So this was new. It's a brand new tool that wasn't part of our benchmark analysis that we're looking to gain, but we will now use it because, to Jess's point, there's actually a higher level of data that's available in the student or social emotional learning. There were over 100 questions asked, not 24 questions in 4 categories. So there's multiple benchmark areas that were surveyed for the kids to respond to that are much, much more specific than just the 24 questions asked by Gallup. So we are very interested, and it just came back. So just started the process to go through it, and we'll make sure you get information related to it because we've seen the high level cursory. We haven't gone to the depth that's been provided yet. So we're now in the process of disaggregating that to analyze the data with Hanover, to understand the results, then to share it with you. We will be public because the kids did administer. It was grades 3 through 12. Gallup is solely grades 5 through 12. So this was a broader survey, and it's interesting to see 3rd grade responses versus high school responses on some questions. Just because of their perspective they have in life and the sensitivity of some of the questions and how they're asked specifically to a 3rd grader versus how they're asked to a high school student.
But you're going to keep doing Gallup.
Yes, Gallup will continue, and that's where we have to go back to what can we learn from the SEL survey, but at the same time, to your point, Mr. Darrow, if we're going to continue to administer Gallup as a national survey, statistically, what is the norming we put in place and what's the goal for improvement that we should have to set for ourselves based upon what's happening? Much like in the 8th grade analysis, there was a decrease, and we're trying to discover why was there a decrease from an 8th grade perspective, because you didn't think that in 7th grade, but you now think that in 8th grade. So what happened between 7th and 8th grade to change that to the level that it's changed? But it's a great conversation to have with kids to say, okay, what's going on? Like, from your perspective, why do you think your friend said this? What's going on in your world now that's different now that you're large and in charge in 8th grade and you're no longer in 7th grade? What happened in your life that makes you think about that differently? Why have you lost hope? You know, why are things more gloom and doom for you rather than Susie Sunshine? What happened? Because something happened. And it's more than just puberty and maturation.
Does Gallup, I know they're big on action plans. Do they give you any specific action plans that have worked for schools to target certain areas?
So they have substantial data protocols that they use, like how do you take this, and then they give us templates on how to build our action plan based upon the data for our particular building and or district. And so I know that those are some things that have been used with the leadership team, those data protocols to build to that action plan that Gallup has provided us.
Okay. Thank you.
I would just offer, again, anything that you can provide feedback to us. If this is, as Michael indicated, a survey we're going to use year over year, it would be helpful to know, what are we aspiring to be? How are we aspiring to do better, and what's the action plan to make that happen, to Debbie's point? In my business, 22 years, we've had the 12 questions that matter survey to our employees. We have the global people survey, surveying everybody in our organization year over year. And every year, part of my goals are, how are you going to get that score up? Or what are we doing wrong? Let's look at it category by category, level by level. And so, if that's not the right survey, then I think we need to readdress whether we should be doing Gallup. But if we are going to continue, I'd suggest ask if it's to challenge ourselves to come up with a strategy on improving elements of our results, because it's they're good scores, but I think we set that benchmark out there high, and like everything else, we want to continuously improve. So appreciate the feedback.
Good. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our last presentation update this evening is on school bus transportation. So I need to provide some context to this to frame the conversation with the Board of Education to make it make sense publicly, despite my individual conversations with you as Board of Education members. As you are aware, we're going to start back at the beginning. Transportation of students within our school districts governed through Ohio Revised Code, and it's specifically Chapter 332701. And within 332701, you align Board of Education policy to talk about how we transport kids. Under state statute, you are required, and again, required, to transport any student in the state of Ohio, specifically New Albany Plain Local Schools, that resides greater than 2 miles in grades kindergarten through 8th grade. You'll recall at the beginning of the school year, we had extensive conversations pursuant to Board of Education policy that there could be an exception. And I'm going to get to the exception in a minute. But under state statute, any student enrolled in grades K through 8 must be transported if they live more than 2 miles from our bus drop-off and pickup location called the intermediate school. The next piece is grades 9 through 12. Pursuant to state statute, transportation for students at the high school level in grades 9 through 12 is permissive. It is not required. We, by state statute, are not required to transport any student enrolled in grades 9 through 12. However, pursuant to Board of Education policy, we choose to transport students in grades 9 through 12 that live greater than 2 miles from the same place, the intermediate school bus loop, where we drop off and pick up kids every single day. Students with special needs are governed by federal and state statute, and there are specific elements related to federal and state statutes to their individualized education program or plans that dictate whether or not they are eligible for specific special needs transportation. So beyond daily transportation that we would provide to students in grades K through 8 or 9 through 12, a student with special needs may have specific regulations that he or she requires for safe transport to school, and we will follow state and federal statute to transport those students accordingly. So at the beginning of the school year, we presented bus routes to you to basically transport kids to school. And pursuant to Board of Education policy, we transport all students in grades K through 5, which is greater than just the 2-mile rule, based upon bus capacity. So when we looked at the fleet capacity at the start of the school year, I asked you to approve the availability of daily transportation for all students in grades K through 5, including students at the elementary level, primary and intermediate, 4th and 5th grade. So it's the kindergarten through 5th grade students that live less than 2 miles from school. So we do transport or have availability of transportation for all students K through 5 today. In grades 6 through 12, we do follow the 2-mile rule, which is basically state regulation. So for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we are only required by state statute to transport greater than 2 miles. And we then effectuate the same because of our current daily bus schedule, where we have AM transportation for students in grades 6 through 12, and then we run elementary right after it for grades K through 5. So we have we're double routed. We have 2 routes that we run simultaneously throughout the day to transport all those students. And then again, of course, we strictly adhere to transportation guidelines and regulations if they're required for students with special needs. So that's our school district internally. In addition to that, through 331390, as part of 332701, to go back to career technical education, we're responsible for transportation for our students attending a career technical education program if it's greater than the 2-mile rule for which we would have. And clearly transporting Eastland Fairfield for the students that actually attend Eastland Fairfield is, so we do have students that do get transportation from us daily to go to the Eastland Fairfield Career Technical Education Center pursuant to state statute. Non-public and community schools have restrictions or regulations as well, and a Board of Education is not required to transport elementary or high school pupils to and from a non-public or community school where such transportation would require more than 30 minutes of direct travel as measured by the school bus from the public school to which the pupils would be assigned if attending the public school designated by the district of residence. And I'm presenting this tonight because this is our current reality of an issue that I have to bring forward to the board based upon some events that took place from parents of non-public school students in our school community. So I'm trying to give you a context of what we're currently doing to talk about the reality of what we have facing us and the decision we have to make and my recommendation to that end. And it's surrounding non-public and community schools. So if eligible and practical to transport, so this is the last piece, and I'm going to get very specific on our current reality. When it's impractical to transport a student by school conveyance, a Board of Education can rule to offer payment. So payment in lieu of is what it's called in the state of Ohio. And if a student is impractical to transport, we pay the family $275 not to transport the student at all. So at the start of our current school year, we had a non-public school route in our district that had 4 students riding. And we, as a school district, approached the families to say that we were going to effectuate impracticality to transport, that it's not practical for us to transport 4 students to a non-public school because it's not an effective and efficient use of our resource to transport 4 kids on any given day. So I started the process pursuant to Ohio Revised Code to notify the families. There was an appeal filed by a family in our school district related to the impracticality declaration that I was making as a superintendent. That impracticality declaration through the appeal process then results in the Ohio Department of Education becoming involved to do a timing. And that's the process that actually happened. So we worked with the families at this particular school, a non-public school outside of our school district, where 4 students were riding transportation to and from school on most days of the week, and tried to share with them that it wasn't an effective use of district resource, that I could justify continuing transportation for 4 students. And there was no way to combine the route with any other routes based upon the timing that would be required for the start and end times of the school day. So it was a bus route by itself, and I ruled it impractical. The Ohio Department of Education came in and ultimately started looking at what this looks like. So this is my quick summary and trying to attempt to summarize what actually happened. But I notified the Ohio Department of Education because of a parent inquiry regarding my intent to declare the one non-public school impractical to transport. We then were submitted a formal request to have a timing conducted by the Ohio Department of Education because there was an appeal filed by a parent within this particular school. Once the appeal was filed, it starts the timing procedures where the Ohio Department of Education sends an official out to actually conduct an official timing. The official timing took place, and I'll talk about a timing in a second, but the official timing took place and ODE declared that the route that I was going to rule impractical to transport because there was only 4 students, ineligible to transport because it was greater than 30 minutes. So under state statute, if you go back to when I first gave you the description for non-public and community schools, it's permissive but not required to transport to any non-public school that is greater than 30 minutes of a route duration from the point of origin. So we actually conducted timings for this particular route using ODE. At the same time that they were here, we discovered that since the relocation of the bus drop-off loop to the intermediate school, the drop-off and pickup loop were now centralized. All of our students go to the intermediate school main bus area. Since we've installed that through the construction process, I discovered that Mr. Bice, who was the former transportation coordinator in the school district, had not requested that the department actually conduct updated timings. And what happens when you conduct the timing is it's from the point of origin. And it's important because that is now the point of origin. So every measurement and timing that occurs for our school district starts in that intermediate lot at the time of day that the bus would be traversing to wherever the destination school district is. For a non-public or community school, a charter school, the career technical education centers, or for students with special needs. But that is the point of origin now. We requested to the department that the timings take place. So again, timings are their origin is where the majority of students attending the New Albany Plain Local School Districts reside. So that is now the intermediate school. The route under Ohio Revised Code has to traverse along the quickest route traversable by a school bus to the bus drop-off location of the school of attendance, but may not include interstate highways. So we cannot take the highway to get to a non-public community school. The bus must traverse through normal back road side streets and the quickest route possible, but is not highway bound based upon student safety under Ohio Revised Code. The route departs at the time of day necessary to traverse the route. So if it's at 7:30 in the morning because they need to be at school at 8 o'clock, the bus would leave at 7:30 for timing purposes because it's supposed to be a 30-minute duration for a route. You have to run the route at the same time that the students would be traversing the route to verify the timing under Ohio Revised Code through the department. You don't wait to like 11 o'clock in the morning because the traffic pattern is not going to be the same at 11 o'clock in the morning as it is at 7:30 in the morning. So the bus has to traverse at the same time for the timing as the bus would normally travel. So pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 332701, Mrs. Honecker filed the paperwork for ODE to come to the school district and conduct new timings for all of the out-of-district routes that exist in our school district because of the relocation of the bus loop. So now we have a centralized bus loop that's at the intermediate school. We've now done new timings. So the bus originates at the time of origin that it would depart normally for students to traverse to school. It has to traverse on the quickest route possible. Weather conditions, traffic patterns, traffic signals, traffic laws are all noted by the department to ensure the safety and welfare of students. And then there's an official timing that's issued by the department. So we've now gone through this process as required under statute with ODE. And these are the new timings that have been sent to the school district based upon the relocation of the middle school, high school, and elementary bus loop to the intermediate school. So I'm going to focus on the top three because they're the ones that are changing. From Bishop Hartley through Wellington for the non-public or community schools, in this case non-public, they were all ruled ineligible. They have been ineligible since the start of the school year. The shift in the bottom section is DeSales for transparency purposes. The complaint that was received by the school district and department for impracticality to transport was St. Francis DeSales. DeSales became ineligible pursuant to the department timing, despite the fact that I was going to rule it impractical because of the 4 students that were riding. The shift is now at the top, and I'm bringing it forward this evening with a recommendation because you as Board of Education members could be asked about the permissiveness under Ohio Revised Code. So Columbus School for Girls in St. Charles is 1 bus route. We started the school year with over 40 students eligible to ride the bus to CSG and St. Charles Preparatory School daily. As of last week, and the last counts that were done for CSG and St. Charles, we've gone from 40 plus kids to 17. On any given day of the week, the maximum number of students we've now seen since the start of second semester is 17. So we had 40 plus at the beginning of the year, we now have 17. The shift is the time in that, based upon the new measurements conducted by ODE, we're currently transporting these students every single day, despite the fact that the timing is now 43 minutes and 53 seconds for CSG and 46 minutes and 38 seconds for St. Charles. So technically, pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code, in accordance with ODE's ruling, these students are now ineligible for daily transportation provided by the school district if you look at equal protection of your application of board policy to all other students in our school district. So I'm bringing this forward tonight because CSG and St. Charles are the one that I have to do something with pending Board of Education conversation. So I'm going to tell you my recommendation in just a second. Just so I can talk about it, Columbus Academy and St. Matthews is also a combined route within our school district. It remains less than 30 minutes and will continue to receive transportation. So all the other schools have received letters from the Department of Education, Ohio Department of Education in the school district, documenting the fact that they're ineligible to transport. And when you're ineligible to transport, you're also ineligible for payment in lieu of. So as a parent in that school, you are no longer eligible to file the paperwork with the school district to come forward to the Board of Education to seek your compensation of $275 per student, because the department has declared your route ineligible. So you can no longer collect the $275. So in looking at this, I met with board council and we had multiple conversations to try to look at, this is not going to be wonderful news for the 17 families currently riding for St. Charles and or Columbus School for Girls, or the number of families involving those 17 students. So I met with legal counsel, and based upon our review of current board policy, Ohio Revised Code, it's my recommendation that we provide written notice to the families that would effectuate ineligibility after the last day of classes in June. Ohio Revised Code requires you to give them 10 days notification pursuant to Board of Education action through the Office of the Superintendent. I'm actually recommending that we exceed the 10-day notification requirement, and because I currently have a driver employed for the route, maintain that route through school district end. It's approximately $40,000, $39,525.24 to be exact, is the cost of the maintaining the route for the entire school year. So it's approximately a $19,000 cost to the school district, but I believe we, from a due diligence standpoint, should give the families an opportunity to understand that this is going to be a significant change for the future as residents of our school district, so they can prepare for making the necessary arrangements effectuated for fall. It's my recommendation that we send them the letter notifying them that they will become ineligible for transportation on the last day of school this current school year. The reason, based upon my conversations with legal counsel, are really two dominant ones. The action provides consistency for eligibility of all non-public and community school students to ensure equal protection requirements are met. And secondly, the permissive decision provided by statute could subject the school district to future claims that could result in other actions or claims of equal protection. And board counsel specifically is not recommending that we should consider that as a separate action. There's significant concern over entering into conversations for deliberation on which private schools or non-public schools you would choose to transport for and which ones you would not transport for. So for consistency, the recommendation from my office and board counsel is that you follow the statute and we treat all the same for equal protection. So I think the compromise that I can offer to the board is that, because I anticipate you're going to get the same phone calls I'm going to get, so I just want to be totally open about that. But to be fair to all, we transport St. Charles and CSG through school year end and provide the written notification in February, because we can produce the letters that gives them ample notice to start making the necessary arrangements for August when school would start again. Questions, comments, or board discussion based upon the recommendation?
It's unfortunate. This wasn't a problem we sought to find. You know, it was the product of a reasonable parent question and or complaint, and we followed procedure. And as a result of following Ohio Revised Code and having the timings conducted by the state, right, by the Ohio Board of Education,
Ohio Department of Education.
Ohio Department of Education. This is the result.
Any other questions or comments?
I would just agree with Mr. Darrow's comments, and again, your point that this opens us up to equal protection issues. If we make one exception, we're forced to make it for all or risk legal action. So again, it is unfortunate, yet I don't see how we have any other choice.
I think it's good we wait till the end of the year to make the change now because families have planned around this. But I agree with your recommendation.
Seems some families, 23 families approximately, have already made some other choices for a variety of reasons, and that all makes sense as well.
And it is cyclical. I mean, Mrs. Honecker and I with Ms. Jenkins, when we look at bus ridership, I mean, even within our own school district, it changes based upon season.
Sure.
Student activities, dance, athletics, I mean, all that has an impact. It's the same at CSG and St. Charles. So we're trying to be respectful of that and understand it, but at the same time, make sure to the points that have been made by both Mr. Newmoff and Mr. Darrow, the equal protection piece is the biggest concern and the legal liability that faces the school district for a potential claim if we're not providing equal protection. So I just needed to be understood, to be public about it. It's all public information. The department was here. They came, they saw, they did. I have all the information. The families will get copies of the letter. We will do our best. We notify the schools. We do not have confirmation of every single student that potentially could ride. That's on the family to then notify. So we will ask St. Charles and CSG to work with us and send something to our families that live within our school district. Because there could be other families that we do not know about because their kids don't ride today that need to be notified that you will be ineligible. So please make sure you plan accordingly.
Michael, I just echoing, it's unfortunate, but consistency is key. I'm just thinking back to when we had some issues related to transportation within the district a few years ago. For these families that would be impacted or affected, I know there's really not anything that the school district can do, but I recall people trying to come up with all kinds of different ideas or things that they could do to transport kids when they were coming here. What options do people have aside from the New Albany Clean Local School buses?
So using the example, I mean, I can speak to what happened with St. Francis de Sales because we were involved with those families, but they coordinated amongst themselves. There's a network of parents that really got networked when they found out that they were losing transportation based upon the ineligibility ruling by the department. So we know that there was organized carpools. Parents did coordinate how they were going to get kids to and from school based upon specific activities. That was led at their building level, so it was responsibility of St. Francis de Sales. The same thing I anticipate will happen with CSG and with St. Charles. They have a very networked parent population. I think the parents that live in New Albany that choose CSG or choose St. Charles are already networked. I think this will just give them something else to then talk about to figure out what else can we do to support each other. We're happy to try to assist them, but we don't coordinate that. We don't coordinate carpools for our own kids. I'm not going to get into the business of coordinating carpools for non-pubs. I just can't do that. That's a parent responsibility. We'll be happy to try to assist them any way we can to get them connected. But St. Charles and or CSG will have the greatest opportunity to do that because they work directly with the families. We struggle to get contact information for the families, particularly cell phones. They don't want to give them to us. Even on an inclement day when we're trying to help talk about school closures, school delays, and what's happening, we're trying to get information to them because if we delay the school district or close the school district, it automatically changes their transportation because it changes my bus driver's transportation. And that's a challenge for us whenever it happens because we rely on CSG, St. Charles, or the other schools to communicate with their families because they're not all in our system. We don't have their contact information. The parent chooses not to give it to us. So I can't communicate with them if I don't have their information. But we will try. We'll work directly with the schools. We do that to provide as much assistance as we can. And I think there's enough lead time here that they have an opportunity to work with families to come up with solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have an opportunity right now for public participation. Anybody who signed up to participate yet tonight?
I didn't sign up, I'm sorry, I got here a little late. May I make a comment?
If we could just have you very quickly. Yeah. You're welcome to come up to the microphone while you're doing that, and
You can give it to Patrick after the fact.
yeah,
Give it to him later.
It's fine.
if you could just let us know
You
who
can
you
give it to
are,
him
where you
before you
live.
leave.
Okay, I'm Julie Hampstead. My son is in 8th grade here at the middle school. And I have 4 children total. The oldest is 30, so I've been through a lot of lines in my lifetime and waited and dropped off children and picked them up. So I've been verbal about the problem with the middle school drop off. Been one of the more verbal parents probably. But I just thought I would share with you my experience so that you'll know what everyone's going through if you haven't done it. So you can come at 7:35 and park, and be the first one there, but you're not allowed to park, so that's a problem. And then if you leave your house at about 7:40, 7:45, you're going to wait 20 minutes. You're going to start out on the street and you're going to wait 20 minutes. And the problem is, and it's great that you're opening the other loop again. That's wonderful. The problem is that poor Miss LeBeau is not going to be able to handle policing people. Okay, so what happens is people are entitled. They feel like they're entitled. So they don't like this line. There's a single line. They don't like a single line. They're entitled to go around, okay? And they do quite often. And so they'll just come, you'll be in the single line and there's, another lane, and they'll just zoom up, put their turn signal on, and cut in, like right in the front, okay? So, and it happens like, you can sit there for 20 minutes and it'll happen 15 times. And I'm not going to say the types of cars that are cutting in. We don't have to go into that. But it's the entitled group who feels like they don't have to wait in line. Now, Miss LeBeau is not going to be able to just be the only person to get this to stop. This morning was nice because there was a police officer, or maybe he's a security guard, and he had repositioned himself up toward the front, okay? So that made it a little harder for people to do that. And so nobody did it except the one lady who always does it in the Mercedes that's kind of dirty. It's white, and she always does it every morning, okay? She decided she'd just go for it and go right around the police officer. So what I'm saying is there are always, until people get reprogrammed to understand the rules, they're going to be all over the place, and they're dropping them off in the parking lot. They're doing the double, triple line thing. And I just don't understand how, unless there are people who are going to be there in the beginning, at least, of this situation, however it's going to be resolved, to help traffic it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Miss LeBeau is only one person, and she tries so hard to do it, but nobody's going to pay attention. Nobody's going to read the memo that went out today and say, oh yeah, I got it. I got to stay in line. Tomorrow, I'm going to stay in line because you sent me a memo at 3:00, and I'm going to stay in line tomorrow, by golly. I'm not going to cut. So that's all I have to say, is that it's probably never going to change. Although having both of them open is going to alleviate probably the backup that's in the center of town.
You have 1 minute.
So, okay. So I would go around the block. So 20 minutes in line, you get out, you turn right, and you go around the block, and you wait through 2 lights in the middle of town, and you see people who are frustrated, who want to get through the light because they've waited so long, and they're now blocking the middle of the intersection. So that's what's going on. But what I'm saying is, unless you maybe get some help from Miss LeBeau, it's not going to work. Not ever going to work. They're always going to be, all over the place, so, for what it's worth. Anyway,
Thank you for staying in
Thank
line
you.
and following the
Sure.
rules.
Indeed.
And
I
I
would do
one
whatever Ms. LeBeau
suggestion.
said.
I know probably half of the buses are empty. Now, I didn't ask you that, but I would like to, that's interesting to see how many kids are riding these buses, because kids don't like to ride the bus because it's not cool.
We have a
So,
lot of kids that ride.
Do you have a lot? Are they full?
They're scheduled to be at capacity. They're running probably between 60 and 80% every day, depending on
Yeah.
the day of the week.
I just wonder how many
And
of
the
these
weather.
parents who are cutting in are the people whose children should be on a school bus.
We have less ridership when it's raining for whatever
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah, right. Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Since I bother you all the time on the bus loop, I won't say anything.
You made a video, so I.
I did.
You have the white Mercedes in it?
I don't have a white Mercedes. I'm only going to say this, and then
Adults can help solve
Then I will
the
get off
problem.
my soapbox. I don't want there to end up being a situation where a child gets hit or Mrs. LeBeau gets hit before people start acting like adults. So please, stay in line. Okay.
I've never run this line. Is there really no way to not have people waiting in line for 20 minutes every day? And I don't have a white Mercedes, but that strikes me or is there an option for kids to get out of their car and walk from further
Right,
away?
there is an option that you don't have to. Mrs. Hampstead's right. Beginning at 7:30, 7:35, there's cars that are lined up all the way to the middle school door as an example. It says first car park here, lead cars on the sign, lead car park here. If you're not going to permit your kid to get out of the car and walk the sidewalk to stand at the door, provided that the weather has cooperated, or to walk to the middle school, high school cafeteria. The cafeteria is open every day as an indoor space that kids can go to. We have parents that will not release their kid from the car until 7:50 when the parent can see their child walk into the school building. So that is part of our issue where this parking happens, because I don't want to drop and go, which is now our new attempt at the other loop. I'm a parent that wants to drop and go to the middle school, high school loop and don't park because there's no parking. If you're going to park and physically wait to watch your child walk into the school building, then you're going to sit in that loop for 20 minutes. The problem then is, and that's why we're trying to figure out this express lane, part of this second lane that's getting created is the parent that wants to go to work that doesn't want to watch their kid walk into the building and doesn't use any other loop to drop off on campus, wants to use that loop. So they cut all the other parents off that are waiting to watch their child walk into the building to then go around them to then go out to go to work. So we think the express lane hopefully can help with that problem to see what it does in this loop if I want to watch my child walk into the building. Mrs. LeBeau, did all that make sense? That's daily practice in that loop. It is an event. It is an event every morning. And to Mr. McClellan's point and Mrs. Hampstead's point, it's not student behavior in a motor vehicle that's inappropriate. It's adult behavior that's in a motor vehicle that's inappropriate. And we've been very polite in trying to address it, but there have been not less than 15 communications that have gone out since the start of this school year, specifically about student safety in a bus loop. And we are trying everything that we know to try. I've had SROs, I've had security, we've put cones, we're now blocking, and in Mrs. Smith's world, we tried this to see what the difference was. We actually blocked the left lane with Leland Kelly's Dare Officers Police Cruiser so that you cannot go through the left lane during elementary drop-off because we had to try something different. So we're trying different things based upon our conversations with the New Albany Police Department to see what else can we do to enhance student safety during drop-off and pickup. But honestly, when we sit to talk to the police, it comes back to how do you change adult behavior not to put kids at risk, short of where Mr. McClellan went. We don't want to see a staff member, in this case, Mrs. LeBeau, Mr. Chaddick, SROs, others, teachers that are out there every single morning for duty, or a student get injured because someone wants to cut through the bus or cut through the loop or cut through the parking lot. And it is a daily occurrence. Mrs. Hampstead is right. where someone believes I'm running late today and I'm not sitting in that line. I'm not choosing to drop off at the primary school and walk down the sidewalk. That's all you have to do. There are 3 cars. We have the data. I can give you the license plate numbers that drop off at the primary loop every single morning for middle school students. The kids walk down the sidewalk next to the primary school, next to the intermediate school, and go straight to the middle school. That parent never sits in that McCoy loop. There's 3 that do it every single day. And they have the benefit of not sitting in that nightmare called traffic. The requirement is you have to allow your kid to walk down the sidewalk to go to school. So we're trying to fix the problem. I absolutely respect everything that Mrs. Hampstead said. She's not part of our problem. She's been part of our solution and giving us some help, trying to say, because we ask questions, what else can we do to try to get parents to have appropriate behavior behind the motor vehicle when you're dropping kids off or picking kids up at school? Honestly, we're opening this express lane. We're worried it's our next headache because it's going to turn into the parking lot, not the express lane. That's why we're painting the curbs yellow. And I said it today, and I agree with Mrs. Hampstead. If you didn't read it, we're going to have to tell you 15 more times. But then there's going to be a ticket because I don't know what else to do to try to help kids be safe. And that's really all this is about, is student safety. But we're trying.
Public shame.
Start posting.
Thank you.
Start posting license plates.
Yeah.
We have not posted any
I
license
know.
plates. I have not given any car descriptions, but we know who you are.
All right, we've exhausted that one.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Treasurer's items, A through C. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Darrow, Ms. Kalinowski. Ms. Jenkins.
Financials, we will continue to run on plan as we've discussed the last few meetings. We will start collecting property tax again this month, going into next month and March, usually get a final settlement. Then you also see appropriation modifications, $20,000 total. Those are for increases in fundraising opportunities for both the principal fund and for student activity fund, and then the 5-year forecast that we are going to hopefully approve this evening, and I will file with the Ohio Department of Education.
Any questions or comments? With none, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Vice President Darrow,
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski,
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
President McClelland.
Yes. And now superintendent's items A through C. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Kalinowski,
Second.
Mr. Bush, Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClellan. Board of Education members, the personnel action items presented to you for this evening are standard employment related action items that you see routinely and regularly. Letter B this evening's general business. I want to spend a minute just talking about this because you have a resolution that's being presented to you this evening for utilizing the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio's Business Advisory Council. So there was a change in the budget bill that now has legislative requirement for local school districts to have established a business advisory council. We have the permissiveness under statute to do this at the local level. However, there's a February filing deadline. So to meet the February filing deadline, we're going to join the Educational Service Center's Business Advisory Council group to submit and be compliant. And then based upon your organizational meeting that took place earlier this month, Mr. Darrow and President McClelland will be working with me to establish a local business advisory council with the statutory requirements that are outlined. So we can still create something locally, but I need to meet and you need to meet, so we all don't get the little checkbox letter, this legislative requirement that was established within the budget bill. So we will come back to this topic because it's going to become, in all likelihood, a new board committee for responsibilities based upon what you did at the organizational meeting to meet the statutory requirement. So this is to make us compliant. We can still choose to participate in the Franklin County version that's being created through the Educational Service Center, even if we do our local version, but we have to have something for statutory provision. So it's presented to you this evening to authorize me to effectuate that agreement with the ESC. And then field trips are standard action items for local, state, or regional competitions for kids to participate in as extended learning opportunities. And then lastly, letter C this evening for donations. As always, We're very grateful for all the generosity shown to the school district for all the different types of donations that we receive to support student activities, including robotics, the football camp, the soccer camps, et cetera, or the extended learning opportunities that are available to kids. So as always, we are very grateful for our PTOs and or the other local benefactors that come to our school district.
Just one additional comment on the Business Advisory Council. I think it is probably something that we do want to have locally. I mean, we're fine participating in the Franklin County one, but we have enough smart people and good businesses in our community that we'd like to make it much more local flavor. And of course, although Mr. Darrow and I are the board liaisons, I think would want everyone to be involved in those conversations and in recruiting good people to sit on that advisory council. So just want to make that comment.
That'll be a coming attraction. So we'll have to do the work, but I got to meet the compliant piece.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, have a roll call, please.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes. Our second opportunity for public participation. With no one, I would like to entertain a motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Mr. Darrow, a second?
Second.
Ms. Kalinowski. Roll call, please.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes, we are adjourned until February 12th, 6:30 for our next education work session.